The Guru Narcissist Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, explaining to you a different type of narcissist and how they function and operate. Catherine Bjorksten is a spiritual mentor and author who is on a mission to raise awareness of abuse by gurus after hearing about many women's experiences. With the commodification of spirituality over the past decade, so much happens that shouldn't happen, she says. The spiritual movement has had its fair share of high-profile #MeToo cases, and yet the message never seems to stick. I would suggest this is because they don't actually realise what these individuals are, and they just describe them as abusers rather than understanding that these are individuals with a pathological need to control and do so through flattery and abuse because they're narcissists. In 2016, Bikram Choudhury, the Rolls-Royce collecting hot yoga mogul, fled the United States after multiple lawsuits were filed against him for rape and sexual assault, which he denies. Denial, first defence of the twin lines of narcissistic defence. Multiple lawsuits filed against him, threat to control, fled, assertion of control through the third assertion of control, withdrawal. Note, a Rolls-Royce collecting hot yoga mogul. Residual benefit, grandiosity. His response when interviewed by HBO, "Why do I have to harass women? People spend $1 million for one drop of my sperm." Grandiosity, sense of entitlement. Choudhury continues to teach with some Bikram studios still operating under his name. When in 2019 the Brazilian psychic John of God was convicted of raping 4 women, abuse, lack of boundary recognition, lack of emotional empathy and sense of entitlement, and another 5 a year later, his abuse was dressed up as healing by his acolytes. In the Netflix documentary John of God, The Crimes of a Spiritual Healer, it was claimed his assaults were guided by an entity or spirit, blame-shifting, triangulation. As one witness explained, to question is to not believe. In 2020, Yogi Bhajan, the Indian guru who brought Kundalini yoga to the West, was posthumously accused of rape, sexual assault and molestation, lack of boundary recognition, manipulative behaviours, absence of emotional empathy. According to Pamela Dyson, his former right-hand woman, whose memoir Premka, White Bird in the Golden Cage, My Life with Yogi Bhajan, revealed his abuse, followers were led to believe that negativity about your teacher will pollute your spiritual destiny. Triangulation, nullification of threat to control. And now, the Dalai Lama has been caught on camera inviting a young boy to suck his tongue, see parts passing. "We are the same humans, brothers and sisters," he told the boy. The laughing and clapping in the background is reminiscent of the personality cults around these other fallen gurus whose ranks close and victims are blamed. Although there is no statistical data on how often this happens, anecdotally, it's evident that a minority of healers are repeatedly trying it on. It's a whole underbelly, says Trish Whelan, a respected shamanic healer and Kundalini yoga teacher who once trained under Yogi Bhajan. Since 2017, the yoga influencer Rachel Brathen, aka Yoga Girl, has been inviting her followers to share their #MeToo stories and has received more than 300 submissions. "I felt like the rest of the world had the #MeToo wave, but the yoga world remained silent, protecting abusers," she explains. One submission reads, "His pattern is to pick the young, pretty, vulnerable one in every teacher training and take her under his wing." Identification of target. He would lure them in and then manipulate them to do whatever he wanted. He is a monster underneath the jokes and playfulness. Part of the problem is the absence of regulation in the spirituality industry, says Elsie, who encourages Instagram followers to be more questioning of it. Anyone can proclaim themselves a healer. Grandiosity. Anyone can do anything. There are lots of people who talk a good game. Meanwhile, he adds, many clients will do whatever it takes to heal and go along with situations they never normally would. Desperation, which is then capitalised on by emotional thinking and the manipulations of the relevant narcissist. All over spirituality, there are stories of healers taking advantage. Elsie points out that in traditional cultures, healers would be supervised by elders who protect the lineage and offer lifelong guidance to those who train under them. The opportunity for abuse is lessened if a healer has to answer to someone. Accountability. In the West, he adds, we have no real elders. It's possible to do a weekend course and then start treating very vulnerable people with no further guidance. It can easily spiral out of control. And remember, an environment such as this, where there is no accountability, the opportunity to be worshipped, the opportunity to be seen as special, is obviously going to draw narcissists to it. Some healers' ability to identify the most defenseless woman is uncanny. How many times do you know that a narcissist's ability to pick out a victim is seen as uncanny, that we almost seem to have a sixth sense to be able to do it? Again, here, they think it's a healer's ability to identify it as uncanny, not realizing that this is the intrinsic ability of a narcissist. Laura, 34, was going through a divorce, special trait, vulnerability, when she met a shaman on a healing retreat in Devon. She was, she says, going through the ringer. I was feeling vulnerable and guilty and filled with a sense of failure. The facilitator was, to her at least, a godly figure, a gifted healer, very good looking and charismatic. On this and subsequent retreat she did with him, he spiritually love-bombed her. Once again, of course, you recognise that as the modus operandi of a narcissist. There was seduction and deep, intense emotional and spiritual discussions. He was singing to my soul. She quickly became his chosen one, but 3 months in, the spiritual abuse began. 3-month golden period, then sustained devaluation. He'd say, you're not enlightened enough, or I'm not hurting you, you're hurting yourself. Blame shifting. Or what you're feeling is just a projection. Fear is just an illusion. It was gaslighting to the highest degree, she says. My mother would tell me, you're in a cult, but a cult of one. How many times have I told you that that is the situation when you're dealing with a narcissist? After 3 years, Laura was a shell of a person. I was so nervous. I was in fight or flight, anticipating his criticism. He broke my spirit. Someone without the same wounding as me would not have let this happen. And this is demonstrative, of course, of the way that her vulnerability made her so susceptible, alongside her addiction to narcissists, to being ensnared in the first place. Laura says she tried to break up with him 3 times, but he always made his way back in. Again, how many times have you heard that with a narcissist? She finally succeeded just before they were due to travel to Mexico together. I just said, I can't do this anymore. The next message, she found 200 messages from him on her phone. Initial Grand Hoover, blitzkrieging, confirmation, she says, that this was definitely the right move. At least she recognised at that point that when he unleashed that initial Grand Hoover to stop her from leaving and draw her back in, it merely solidified the evidence to her that she was doing the right thing. Join me in part 3 as we examine the guru narcissists.